You know how those big suburban neighborhoods do Halloween, right? Like a whole cul-de-sac or a block will have this massive, sprawling party, houses open, people wandering between them. It's usually a blast. This one time, my buddies and I, there were four of us, Dave, Mike, Chris, and me. We were heading to one of these legendary Halloween block parties out in a sprawling newer suburban development near Naperville, Illinois. We'd heard it was epic, tons of people, multiple houses involved. The address we had was a bit vague, something like the house with the giant inflatable spider on Oak Street near the cul-de-sac. So we're driving around Oak Street. It's dark. A lot of houses have decorations up, but it's a long street. We finally see a house at the end of a quiet side street near what looked like a cul-de-sac with a few cars parked outside. It didn't have a giant inflatable spider, but there were some pumpkins on the porch, and the lights inside were dim, kind of spooky, with faint, thumping music coming from within. We figured, okay, maybe this is the quiet zone of the bigger party. Or we're just a bit early before it really kicks off. The front door was slightly ajar, which isn't uncommon at those big open Halloween parties. So, feeling the party spirit, we just pushed it open a bit further and stepped inside, calling out a cheerful trick or treat or party time. The atmosphere hit us immediately. It was weird, dead weird. The air was heavy, almost still, despite the faint throb of music that seemed to be coming from nowhere in particular. The front room was dimly lit by a couple of those flickering fake candle things. And there were people in there, maybe 5 or 6 of them, but they weren't partying. They were just standing or sitting, motionless. All of them were in costume, but these weren't your fun, store-bought Halloween get-ups. These were elaborate, disturbingly realistic. One guy was dressed as a plague doctor, his long beak mask utterly terrifying in the dim light. A woman wore a tattered, antique-looking wedding dress, her face painted a deathly white, her eyes dark and staring. Another figure was just a tall, shapeless black robe with a deeply cowled hood that completely obscured any features. They were all completely silent, and they all slowly turned their heads and just stared at us as we stood awkwardly in the doorway. No, hey, welcome. No, wrong house, guys. Just this silent, unblinking, collective stare. There was no host in sight, no bowls of candy or chips, no drinks laid out. Just these silent costumed figures and an overwhelming sense of wrongness. My stomach did a little flip. This wasn't a party. This was something else. My mind started racing. Was this some kind of performance art thing? A really intense, immersive haunted house we'd stumbled into by mistake? Or a much darker thought started to form. Were these costumes even costumes? The detail, the way they fit, the stillness of the wearers. It was too good, too real. Sorry, I stammered, feeling like a complete idiot. I think we might have the wrong house. We were looking for the big block party. No response. Just those silent, staring figures. The plague doctor's beaked mask seemed to be pointing right at me. The bride's painted smile looked less like a smile and more like a rictus. Yeah, definitely the wrong house, Dave muttered beside me, already starting to back towards the door. Our bad. We'll just go. As we started to retreat, one of the figures, the tall, robed one that had been standing near the hallway, moved. It didn't move fast. It just glided silently to a position that subtly, almost casually, blocked the most direct path to the front door we'd come in through. It didn't say anything. It didn't make any threatening gestures, but the message was clear. You're not leaving just yet. My heart was hammering now. This was bad. This was really bad. What had we walked into? Were these people part of some weird cult, interrupted in the middle of a ritual? Were they criminals using this empty looking house for a clandestine meeting and we just blown their cover? The local stories about this newer, sprawling subdivision sometimes mention strange groups or houses that seem to have a lot of late night visitors, but no one ever saw who lived there. We'd always dismissed it as neighborhood gossip. Look, we're really sorry to intrude, Chris said, his voice high-pitched with barely suppressed panic. We'll just get out of your hair. He tried to step around the robed figure. The figure shifted again, still silent, still blocking him. Then another one of them, a man in a disturbingly realistic wolf mask. A mask that looked like it had real fur and teeth, let out a low, soft growl, not a playful Halloween growl. This was an animalistic, threatening sound that vibrated in the still air. That was it for us. We weren't going to stick around to find out what they wanted. There was another door visible at the far end of the living room, one that looked like it might lead to a kitchen, and hopefully a back exit. Kitchen, I yelled, and we just bolted, all four of us, pushing past a startled-looking figure in a clown costume that hadn't moved until then. We crashed through the kitchen, fumbled with a back door lock that thankfully wasn't deadbolted, and burst out into the backyard, then scrambled over a low fence into the blessed anonymity of the next yard, not stopping until we were several streets away, gasping for breath, hearts pounding. We never found the real block party that night. We just went home, thoroughly freaked out. When we told some other friends about it the next day, they, of course, thought we were exaggerating, or had just stumbled into a really intense, goth-themed Halloween party where everyone was super committed to their creepy roles. Dude, you probably just walked in on some serious method actors, one of them joked. Or a very exclusive, very weird costume contest. But we knew it wasn't that. The silence, the stillness, the way they moved to block the door, that growl, it wasn't a party. It was something else. Something dangerous. Were they a cult? A gang? Were those costumes a way to ensure anonymity if someone like us stumbled in? We'll never know. We drove past that house a week later, in broad daylight. It looked completely normal. A bit neglected, maybe, but just another suburban house. No pumpkins, no sign of any party or any occupants. It taught me a valuable lesson, though. On Halloween, when everyone's wearing a mask, you never really know who or what you're dealing with. And sometimes an open door isn't an invitation. It's a trap. And the scariest costumes are the ones that might not be costumes at all. We were lucky to get out of that wrong house with just a good scare. I hate to think what might have happened if that robed figure had been a little quicker, or if that back door had been locked. My old college roommate, Chloe, she was always up for anything, especially if it sounded a bit spooky or adventurous. She told me this story about a Halloween party she went to one year. And honestly, it still gives me the creeps just thinking about it. The party was at this massive old Victorian mansion on the outskirts of New Orleans. A place that was practically a local legend. The Devereux House, it was called. It had been empty for years, falling into disrepair, and was rumored to be seriously haunted, you know? The whole 9 yards, tragic family history, unexplained noises, the works. Some even whispered about old voodoo rituals being performed there back in the day. So, when this eccentric art collective she knew announced they were throwing a massive Halloween bash there. A night of shadows and whispers, Chloe and her group of friends were all over it. The house itself was incredible, straight out of a horror movie. Cobwebs everywhere, dim, Flickering candelabras, eerie music drifting from unseen speakers. The art collective had set up various installations throughout the sprawling mansion. And the main event was supposed to be this elaborate scavenger hunt or puzzle game that would lead you through different, supposedly haunted parts of the house to find some ancient artifact. Very on theme. Chloe and her three friends, let's call them Liam, Maya, and Sam, eagerly joined the game. The first few clues were easy enough, leading them through the crowded main rooms of the party. But then the clues started directing them to the more remote, less renovated, and decidedly creepier parts of the Devereaux house. The damp, musty-smelling basement with its earthen floor and strange, rust-stained alcoves. The dusty, cobweb-choked attic filled with broken furniture and old forgotten trunks. A series of small locked servants' rooms and a disused wing, their doors warped and peeling. The atmosphere was getting genuinely unsettling, the party sounds fading into the distance. It was in the servants' wing, a long dark corridor with a single flickering bulb, that things started to feel really wrong. They found a clue tucked under a loose floorboard that told them to find the room where the last Devereaux daughter wept. As they were searching, trying doors, Chloe got this distinct feeling they were being watched. Not by other partygoers, but by someone or something else. She'd catch fleeting movements in the shadows at the end of the corridor, or hear a floorboard creak in an empty room nearby when they were all standing still. Then, one of the locked doors at the very end of the hall, slowly, silently, creaked open a few inches, as if inviting them in. Liam, being the brave one, pushed it open further. The room inside was small, dark, and empty, except for a single, child-sized rocking chair in the middle, rocking gently back and forth as if someone had just gotten up from it. And there was a very faint, sweet, cloying smell in the air, like old, dried flowers. "Okay, this is getting a bit much, even for a Halloween game," Maya whispered, her voice trembling. As they hesitated in the doorway, the door to the room suddenly slammed shut with a loud bang, plunging them into darkness for a second before Liam found his phone flashlight. When they tried the handle, it was locked from the inside. Or so it seemed. Sam, who was the last one near the door, swore he hadn't touched it, and that he'd felt a cold draft just before it slammed. Panic started to set in. They were trapped in this dark, creepy corridor. They banged on the door, shouted for help. No response. Then, from the room they'd just been locked out of, they heard it. A soft, childlike humming. A simple, mournful tune. This was definitely not part of any game they'd signed up for. This felt real. This felt dangerous. Were the hosts of the party just incredibly good at creating a terrifying atmosphere? Or had they stumbled into something else, something genuinely sinister within the walls of the infamous Devereaux house? Those local stories about its dark history, about strange rituals. Ben, thankfully, still had a weak cell signal. He managed to call another friend who was still in the main party area, babbling about being trapped. It took about 20 minutes, which felt like an eternity, for their friend and one of the art collective organizers to find them. The organizer, a guy in a bizarre goat mask, seemed more annoyed than concerned. He had a key to the room, of course. When he opened it, the room was empty. The rocking chair was still. The sweet smell was gone. There was no sign anyone, or anything, had been in there. "You guys just got spooked by the house's reputation," the goat-masked organizer said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "It's an old house, it makes noises. The door probably just slammed shut in a draft. And the humming. Sound carries weird in these old places." He didn't seem to believe a word of their terror. Chloe and her friends didn't stick around for the rest of the party. The game had lost all its appeal. Chloe told me she's still not sure what happened that night. Was it an incredibly elaborate, psychologically manipulative setup by the party organizers, designed to be the ultimate Halloween scare? Or had they genuinely encountered something else in that old rumored house? Something that was playing its own far more ancient and sinister game. The way that door slammed, the humming, the feeling of being watched, it felt too real, too intelligent to be just the house settling. And the organizer's quick dismissal, his lack of surprise, it made her wonder if he knew more than he was letting on. It makes you think, doesn't it? When you go to a Halloween party in a place with a dark reputation, how much of the fear is manufactured, and how much might be something else, something that was there long before the party started, and will be there long after the last guest has gone home. And when does a game stop being a game and start being a genuine, terrifying experience that no one else will ever truly believe? I'm generally not a huge fan of Halloween parties, but my close circle of friends, we usually have a small get together at someone's house. Just us, some themed snacks, maybe a scary movie. This one year, our friend Liam, who's always been a bit of a drama enthusiast, decided we should do something different. He suggested we all collaborate on writing and performing a short, cheesy, over the top horror skit just for ourselves, for laughs. We were at his suburban house in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where nothing much ever happens. There were about 6 of us. Me, Liam, his girlfriend Maya, our other friends Sarah, Ben, and a guy named Sam. Sam was usually the quietest one in our group, a bit socially awkward, very gentle, wouldn't say boo to a goose. We brainstormed a silly plot, something about a group of friends in a haunted cabin, being picked off one by a crazed, axe-wielding maniac. Standard stuff. Liam naturally cast himself as the hero. Sarah and Maya were the damsels in distress. Ben was the comic relief who dies first. And then, to everyone's surprise, Quiet Sam, who usually avoided the spotlight, volunteered to play the axe-wielding maniac. I think I could have some fun with that, he said, with a small, almost shy smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. We all just figured he was trying to come out of his shell a bit. We rehearsed for about an hour, mostly just figuring out blocking and laughing at our terrible acting. For props, Liam had a bunch of old Halloween decorations, including a couple of those cheap plastic, obviously fake axes. Sam picked one up, testing its weight, a strange, intense look on his face that we all just attributed to him getting into character. When it came time to perform the skit in Liam's dimly lit living room for an audience of, well, ourselves, Sam was incredible. Too incredible. He wasn't just acting like a maniac. He became one. His usual quiet demeanor vanished, replaced by this unsettling, guttural voice, a wild, staring look in his eyes, and a physicality that was genuinely menacing. His movements were jerky, unpredictable. When he chased Ben around the room with the plastic axe, Ben was actually genuinely scared, not just play acting. We were all a bit taken aback, but also impressed. Wow, Sam, hidden talents, Liam said, with a nervous laugh. The skit progressed. Sam, as the maniac, cornered Sarah in the kitchen. The script called for him to raise the plastic axe, for her to scream, and for Liam to then burst in and save her. Sam raised the axe, but it wasn't the plastic one anymore. Somehow, in the dim light and the confusion of the chase, he'd swapped it. He was holding one of Liam's real, heavy, sharp, kindling axes from the woodshed by the fireplace, and the look in his eyes. It wasn't acting. It was something else. Something cold. Something empty. Something terrifyingly real. Sarah screamed, a real scream this time, not a pretend one. Liam, who was supposed to make his heroic entrance, just froze, his face white. We all did. The air in the room suddenly became thick, charged with a horrible, unspoken understanding. This wasn't a skit anymore. Sam, ma'am, what are you doing? Ben stammered, his voice trembling. That's not the prop. Sam didn't answer. He just stared at Sarah, the real axe held high, a strange, twisted smile playing on his lips. He took a step towards her. It was me who finally broke the spell. I don't know where it came from, but I just yelled, Sam, stop. It's over. The skit's over. You win. Best actor. My voice was way too loud, cracking with fear. For a long, agonizing moment, Sam didn't move, didn't react. He just stood there, axe raised, that horrible smile on his face. Then, very slowly, as if coming out of a trance, he blinked. The wildness in his eyes seemed to recede, just a little. He looked down at the real axe in his hand, as if seeing it for the first time. A flicker of confusion, then horror dawning on his face. He dropped it with a clatter on the kitchen floor. Oh God, he whispered, his voice back to his normal, quiet tone, but shaking. Oh God, what was I doing? I don't know what happened. He looked utterly lost, terrified of himself. The rest of the night was a blur of hushed, scared conversations, awkward attempts to comfort a now sobbing and deeply ashamed Sam, and a collective, unspoken agreement that this was something we would never ever talk about outside our group. Liam quietly took the real axe and locked it away. The party ended very quickly after that. No one ever really understood what happened to Sam that night. Was it a momentary psychotic break, triggered by the stress of performing, by the theme of the skit? Had he been harboring some dark, hidden thoughts or resentments that the anonymity of the role allowed to surface? Or even more chillingly, had he planned something all along? Something truly terrible, and had only been snapped out of it at the very last second by my desperate shout. The offense was the terrifying blurring of lines between play and reality. The sudden, horrifying realization that a friend, someone you thought you knew, could be capable of that. We all tried to support Sam afterwards. He sought professional help, thankfully. He never really had a clear explanation for his actions that night, just a lot of confusion and remorse. Our group of friends. Well, it was never quite the same after that. There was always that unspoken fear, that knowledge of what almost happened. When people talk about Halloween pranks going too far or getting too into a costume, I always think of Sam and that axe. It's a reminder that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't the ones in masks and costumes, but the ones that might be lurking just beneath the surface of someone you thought you knew. And that sometimes a harmless Halloween skit can come terrifyingly close to becoming a real-life horror story, with no one left to tell the tale except the survivors, who will never quite be believed.